As soon as you mention the term AI, it doesn't matter the context, you are bound to see all manner of opinions, ranging from completely against it to completely in favor. And oftentimes there isn't a nuanced middle position where people are willing to discuss what it is actually being used for, and there is absolutely no difference in the case of Firefox 130 and its game-changing feature, automatic alt text generation for images using a fully private on-device AI model. And to absolutely no one's surprise, most of the people commenting are bringing up concerns both in favor and against it that are specifically addressed in the article. So let's actually go and have a look at the post. Experimenting with local alt text generation in Firefox nightly. Now, when we say alt text, what we mean is that text that is shown when an image is not loaded, or in the case of a screen reader, the text that is read when the screen reader goes over that image. Now, the main issue with alt text is it is a very manual process. If you're a website developer and you add an image to the website, you have to go and write the alt text yourself. And for some images, that can be pretty easy. For others, it might take a little bit more effort. And if we're dealing with social media posts, the poster of the image needs to go and write it themselves. And even though alt text is required as part of the HTML spec for the image tag, unfortunately, many authors don't do this. The Web Almanac reported in 2022 that nearly half of images were missing alt text. Now, I would be curious to see what the numbers specifically on social media are, because I have a feeling that missing alt text might be even higher. For a very long time now, if a service wanted to have automatic alt text generation on the server side, doing that hasn't been that difficult. But doing it on the client side, doing it on your local device, that's been more of an issue. Until recently, it's not been feasible for the browser to infer reasonably high quality alt text for images without sending potentially sensitive data to a remote server. However, latest developments in AI have enabled this type of image analysis to happen efficiently, even on a CPU. Now, this is not going to outperform solutions like GPT-4 Turbo, but it just doesn't need to do that. Generating alt text with small open source models. We are using transformer-based machine learning models to describe images. These models are getting good at describing the content of the image, yet are compact enough to operate on devices with limited resources. Model architectures like Blip or even VIT that were trained on datasets like Coco, the Common Object in Context, or Flickr 30K are good at identifying objects in an image. When combined with a text decoder like OpenAI's GPT-2, not 3, not 4, going all the way back to that one, and there's a reason for that, they can produce alt text with 200 million or fewer parameters. Once quantized, these models can be under 200 megabytes on disk and run in a couple of seconds on a laptop, a big reduction compared to the gigabytes and resources an LLM, a large language model, requires, or in the case of what we are seeing with the really big models out there, considerably more data than that. And here we have a single example. Now, obviously, a single example doesn't give us a full range of information, but it still gives us an idea of what is happening. So we have the Firefox model, a 182 million parameter model using a distilled version of GPT-2 alongside a Vision Transformer image encoder. Then we have the baseline model, a slightly bigger Vision Transformer plus the GPT-2 model, and then human-provided description of the image. So what we have here is a picture of a cake. It has some candles in it. There are some people standing in the background. What Firefox says is a person is standing in front of a cake with candles. The baseline model, a woman is holding a cake with candles on it. She's not holding the cake. It seems to be hallucinating a little bit there. And then the human text, people are looking at a decorative cake with long candles. Obviously, the human text is the best description here. But that is obviously what was going to happen, and nobody was going to argue otherwise. But the Firefox description, I would say, is perfectly fine. No, it is not perfect, and yes, it could be better. But if your options are, you need a screen reader, and you have no idea what is in that image because it just doesn't have alt text, or this description from the Firefox model, I think I know which one's a lot better. Now, what matters in the image is going to depend on the specific case. Notice how the person did not write about the office setting or the cherries on the cake and specified that the candles were long. I honestly didn't even realize there were cherries until I read that, but I guess they are there. And yes, those are really long candles. The model is going to have the exact same constraints as well, and on certain images, it might focus on something that isn't relevant to the context of the image, but I'm still going to say that having something is much better than nothing. Now, of course, this also got tested in GPT-4o, and the results were extremely detailed. The image depicts a group of people gathered around a cake with lit candles. The focus is on the cake, which has a red jelly topping and a couple of cherries. There are several lit candles in the foreground. In the background, there is a woman smiling, wearing a grey turtleneck sweater, and a few other people can be seen, likely in an office or indoor setting. The image conveys a celebratory atmosphere, possibly a birthday or a special occasion. And this is really descriptive, but it's a lot of text for alt text. Doing a bit of minor prompt engineering can get you down to a single sentence. A group of people in an office celebrates with a lit birthday cake in the foreground and a smiling woman in the background. But this is still going to have the issue of leaking data out to an external server, and that is just not what Firefox is trying to do here. That is why they want to do everything on your local device. Running inference locally with small models offers many advantages. Privacy. All operations are contained within the device, ensuring data privacy. We won't have access to your images, PDF content, generated captions, or final captions. Your data will not be used to train the model. Unlike another company, I actually trust that Mozilla is going to keep their word here. Microsoft. 2. Resource efficiency. Small models eliminate the need for high-powered GPUs in the cloud, reducing resource consumption and making it more environmentally friendly. Change that to making it more economically viable. Increased transparency. In-house management of models allows for direct oversight of the training datasets, offering more transparency compared to some large language models. When we're looking at something like GPT-4, for example, you have no idea what data this has been trained on. It's fair to assume it's most of the internet, but, you don't have any specifics there. Carbon footprint monitoring. Training models in-house facilitates precise tracking of CO2 emissions using tools such as Code Carbon. I think there should be another one right in between here. Again, economically viable, but hey, we can't say that in the write-up. Let's just not talk about that one. Ease of improvement. Since retraining can be completed in less than a day on a single piece of hardware, it allows for frequent updates and enhancement of the model. Again, when you download the model being used in this feature, everything is being done locally on your system. There is no data being processed on Mozilla servers. That is done beforehand. That is done when the model is being trained. When you have the model, it is all done locally. Now, the initial deployment of this is going to be fairly small, not to a small number of users, but a small part of the Firefox feature set. The Firefox PDF editor, which, if you were like me, you probably didn't realize existed. Let me know if you knew about it. Anyway, Firefox PDF editor. Starting in Firefox 1.30, we will automatically generate an alt text and let the user validate it. So every time an image is added, we get an array of pixels we pass to the ML engine, and a few seconds after, we get a string corresponding to a description of this image. The first time the user adds an image, they'll have to wait a bit for downloading the model, which can take up to a few minutes depending on your connection. But the subsequent uses will be much faster since the model will be stored locally. If you do not want this feature, it is entirely optional. The model is not being bundled with Firefox. You have to actively choose to go and download it and go and add it to your system. As the project grows, we anticipate the browser will store more models, which can take up significant space on disk. we plan to add an interface in Firefox to manage downloaded models so our users can list them and remove some if needed. In the future, we want to be able to provide alt text for any existing images in PDFs except images which just contain text, which is usually the case for PDFs containing scanned books. Not because they don't want those to be accessible, but because there are better ways to do this than just providing a description of the image. And of course, the goal is to eventually expand it to everything. As we develop it further and learn from the deployment, our goal is to offer it for users who'd like to use it when browsing to help them better understand images which would otherwise be inaccessible. But rather than going just all in straight away, it's much better to test it on a small-scale case, get results back about what could be improved, what cases don't work, what sort of image sets just do not function whatsoever, and then improve it from there, and then when it is good enough, go for a larger deployment. Now, as with all of these AI use cases, it exists in this weird legal gray zone where you don't actually know if the way the model has been trained is legal because no countries actually have laws around AI model training yet, and all of these questions are still trying to be resolved. This is just how AI is. Like, this is not specific to what Firefox is doing. Putting that aside, of the uses for AI, I do think this is one of the very few uses that actually is really good. Alt text is really important, and oftentimes I do just forget to add it myself, and I'm not alone here. Let alone the people that just don't know what alt text is in the first place, and we're never going to consider adding it anyway. Yes, this solution is going to have some hallucinations, and sometimes the content of the image just is going to be described poorly. But there are going to be a bunch of other cases where it's not great, but it is much, much better than nothing. And for those people that rely on alt text, I do think this is a really, really cool solution. We'll see how it improves, we'll see what happens with the full deployment, and hopefully, this makes the web just a little bit more accessible. And again, if you don't want to use this, it's not bloat, you do not ever have to download the model. It is not bundled with Firefox. But let me know your thoughts. Do you think this is cool? Do you think this is going to work? Or do you think this is going to hallucinate way too much to actually be useful? I'd love to know. And if you're someone this would actually affect and you need to rely on alt text for screen readers and things like that, let me know your thoughts. So if you liked the video, go like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, Scribes, Liberapay linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and is this the one good use of AI? Probably.
Something like this.